The subject today is on not blaming one's circumstances, not blaming the object outside for our own failure to practice correctly. Always we have to blame ourselves and not something outside. And there are two main parts to this. One part is on understanding that you always have a choice in regard to whatever situation you are in, whatever circumstances you are in. There is always the possibility of protecting yourself from it, finding a way around it, finding a way to meditate within it, or avoiding it completely if necessary. It depends on the situation. Second is also to understand that it's not either about just needing a perfectly quiet or perfectly serene, lonely place in order to be able to practice. Because the aim is not to have nothing disturbing us, the aim is to be undisturbed inside. That doesn't depend on the circumstances outside. However, sometimes it is necessary to protect ourselves from circumstances that are particularly damaging or particularly problematic for us as we are learning, as we are strengthening ourselves, because we're not strong enough in the beginning to just go everywhere and be in any situation without having our practice being compromised. To strengthen one's practice, to grow one's practice, to develop qualities, there are four main efforts that have to be made. The first is to give rise to qualities that we don't have already. This can be compared to planting a tree, planting an apple tree, for example, a tree that will give fruit, a useful tree in your garden. So planting the tree is the first step, but it's not enough. If you just plant the tree and then you walk away and you leave it by itself, for sure the tree, if it's a young sapling or if it's just a seed, it will never survive the first summer. You have to help it. This means that you have to fertilize it, you have to feed it, you have to weed around it, you have to prevent harmful things from growing in its place, and you have to protect it. So along with planting good qualities, giving rise to them in ourselves, we have to also weed out harmful qualities continually, weed out the kilesa, weed out the faults in ourselves. We have to nourish and develop our good qualities, work on them, practice them continually, and most importantly for what we're talking about here, we have to protect them. Because as with a tree, if you don't protect it, there will be rodents who will come and eat the bark during wintertime. There will be insects that can come and bore their way into the trunk. There are deer that can come and eat the branches. And your tree will just be eaten by predators. So in the same way, we have to protect our practice, protect our qualities from elements that are harmful to them, from situations that are harmful to them. Exactly what those types of situations might be can vary a little bit depending on our character, depending on our habits, depending on what bad qualities are very strongly anchored in us, what qualities we have. But in general, living surrounded by sensuality of whatever form is never a good thing. It's certainly not a good thing to be associated with what are called fools in Dhamma, people who are immoral or people who have no wisdom or little goodness. The best is to be surrounded by practitioners, or if this is not possible, then it's better to be alone. It's also usually not favorable to be in extremely noisy places, like in the middle of a busy city, or any place where it's very difficult for the mind to be calm, where there's full of different objects outside constantly attacking the mind. Or to have an extremely stressful job, that a full-time job, is almost impossible to have all the attention to practice Dhamma at the same time. So there are certain circumstances that make it more difficult or almost impossible sometimes, depending on the level our practice is at, to keep up our practice and to make all the effort that is needed to keep up with the kilesa that we have to deal with. So now the question is, what do we do if we find ourselves forced into a situation where it's difficult to practice? I want to practice, but my job is too stressful. How do I deal with it? My practice is not going well because at the moment I have a lot of things to deal with and I'm too busy. Or let's say at the moment the people around me are not practicing, are not serious. I don't have good companions. It makes it more difficult. I'm associated with them. So the first thing we have to see is that we always have a choice in regard to whatever situation we are in, whatever our circumstances. It's never the case that we are really and truly forced to stay in a situation that is harmful or that is problematic. And we also always have a choice about how we behave in regard to it. So let's say we work with somebody who's always wanting to talk about useless subjects, and we don't want to go to an extreme measure like leaving our job or just quitting. Well, we have a choice about whether we decide to engage in conversation with them or not. We have a choice about how we behave in regard to them. We might even have the possibility of wearing earplugs if necessary. We can just go in our corner, be silent, do our job, take our job as a meditation. We always have options about what we do. And if an environment, a situation is really deadly, really dangerous, and we see that it's a problem, then we have the choice to simply refuse to go into it. We have the choice to put our practice, put our development of qualities above everything else. This has to be the first priority if this really is our aim. Whatever we do is our responsibility. Ajahn was giving the analogy that it's like on our land we have a pond in which there are insects that bite if you go to swim in the pond. So knowing that there are these insects inside that will bite you and make you be scratching afterwards for days, do you go to swim in the pond? Do you choose to dive into it, to jump into it? Even if, let's say, the pond is full of people all encouraging you to come in, singing and dancing, and they look like they're having so much fun and it's really hot outside, do you go to swim in the pond, knowing that it's full of the biting insects? No. I don't care what anybody says, I'm not getting in that place. I'm not going in there. I don't want to have the consequences. So it's the same for anything that is going to be a danger or a threat to our concentration, to our mindfulness, to our development of qualities. If our aim is clear that this is our priority, this is what our aim in the life is, this is what's most important for us above everything else, there's no way we will agree to jeopardize it, to put it in danger. It doesn't matter what anybody is saying. It doesn't matter how much people might encourage you to take part in, let's say, drinking alcohol. If you're a meditator, there's no way you will agree. Even if everybody else ends up disliking me or thinking I'm strange, or I don't care. This brings me to another point that in regard to this, we have to be careful not to compare ourselves with others, or not to think that it's one rule that is the same for everybody. Because different people have different qualities and different kilesa, and this means that something that is a big problem for one person might not be such a problem for somebody else. Let's say if you're severely allergic to mosquitoes, you can simply just not go outside if it's a hot day in the summertime when there are tons and tons of mosquitoes around. You have to wait for another moment, or if you go out, you can only go with like 3 layers of mosquito net, so you have to protect yourself from this problem. While somebody else who's not allergic, he can go out, even he might get stung a couple of times, but it will not really bother him and it will not be a danger to him. So in the same way, some people are more in danger of having their practice fall down because of one particular object that might not necessarily be such a problem for somebody else. Obviously here I'm not talking about breaking the 5 precepts, that's always a total no-go area for everybody. Here I'm referring just to something more mild, like being in a slightly noisy environment or having circumstances that are not ideal, we'll say. So we don't take that as an excuse to say, oh yes, for others alcohol is a problem, but for me it's not a problem if I drink alcohol, it helps my practice because I become more relaxed. Yeah, we'll see how far you get with that. End of parenthesis. Now to come back to the point about it not being a hard and fast rule for everybody. So it's very important in this and in general in Dhamma, in our practice as well, not to be comparing ourselves with others, not to look at or pay attention to the practice of others, neither to find fault with what they do because we don't know what's in their mind, and how they practice is none of our business. Our job is to correct ourselves, and we're working for our own aim, not somebody else's. Another point in regard to this that is very good to mention is that when we fall down in our practice, it's not for no reason. It's because of our own carelessness or our own curiosity in regard to something that we know is problematic, but that we are curious about experiencing it. Curiosity, especially coupled with carelessness, are extremely dangerous, so you have to get to know these very well and don't be cheated by them. Don't allow them to make excuses. It's very easy to say, oh, it's just for this one time, or oh, it's no problem because of this or that, while all the while knowing really that it's not a good thing to do. It's neither useful nor helpful. There is one story of a nun in the time of the Buddha who had the potential to become Arahan, according to the Buddha, but was not yet Sotapanna, was still practicing on the path, but had the qualities to become arahant. And one day, as she was in her kuti, her little cabin, she was visited by a cousin of hers, a young man, and he offered to massage her feet. So she agreed, and when he was massaging her feet, they fell in love. She left the practice, they got married, and they had something like 7 children. But of course, the potential to become arahant was lost. So from one little carelessness, something, no, it's no problem, just 1 foot massage, little foot massage, but it has such big consequences. Or just a little curiosity, I don't remember him, I would like to get him know him a bit better, no problem. Like, we think we are strong, we think we can tough it, we think that our practice is so strong, but it's so easy to fall just from a little element, a little entryway. If we leave the door open, like the Buddha is always saying, if you leave the door open just a crack, Mara will get his foot in the door. So don't leave the door open, keep it locked. Don't take any risk. Don't leave any space for this kilesa to enter that can make you eventually lose the practice. And a big part of that too is not being complacent, not taking it for granted that my practice is so strong and it's going so well and I don't need to be careful because I am very strong in my practice. You're never able to let go of your practice until you're arahant. But for us, we have to work and work just to become sotapanna, to get that security. Until we're at least sotapanna, there is really no security. We can lose the entire practice if we don't protect ourselves. So just like the tree, if it's not protected, just even one little insect that can bore its way into the trunk and now infiltrate its way around the whole tree, it can eat the whole tree from inside out. So same way, a kilesa can infiltrate its way into our mind and burn through all our qualities if we don't protect them. Protecting them, the practice of protecting our qualities, has 2 parts. First, it's to hold on to the practice of mindfulness, the satipatthana that we do. That is the 4 ways of meditation. Meditation on intention of movement, meditation on the breath, meditation on vedana, feeling, meditation on dhamma. Hold on to it all the time, in whatever circumstance. Doesn't matter if we're in the grocery and there's loud music and there's people everywhere, we can still practice this same mindfulness, this same meditation. So to hold on to that regardless of whatever circumstance we are in, but at the same time to also be careful and not recklessly go into circumstances or situations where we will be in danger of losing our attention, losing our practice. To know that it's always our responsibility how we live and how we behave in regard to any situation, any object. So it's never okay to put the blame on an outside object or an outside circumstance for the fact that we are not practicing well. To blame the outside for our own weakness, our own lack of resolution or our own lack of wisdom. I don't say that in order that we start beating ourselves and crying with guilt or something like that. No, it's just to see the places where I have to correct, where I have to develop, where I have to improve. If I catch myself each time where I'm doing something wrong and I improve each time, then I correct myself and I bring myself on the right path.